Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Today I'm going to be reviewing the final Witcher book in the reading order, and that is The Lady of the Lake by Andrzej Sapkowski. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm feeling a bit sad about all this because if you've stuck around on my channel for any amount of time, you would have noticed that I like the Witcher books quite a lot, and I've been reading them for about the last year on and off, and it's the end of an era. At least it is for me. This is the first series that I've finished in a long time. It's the first adult fantasy series I've ever finished, full stop. And so, I guess topically, referencing a quote from the book, here something is ending and something is beginning. But my god, I'm just really sad to now be saying goodbye to all of these characters for the last time. And of course I'm going to reread these books at some point. In fact, I plan on it. But it's just knowing that now all of the surprises are over and I can reread it, but, it's over. And man, I've just got mixed feelings about how this thing has ended, and I want to talk about the series with you all. So, let's get into it. Full spoilers, of course, for the series, for the show, all of that stuff. If you don't want to get spoiled, click off now, and come back again if you want to later. Okay, so we'll start with the good things, because Andrew Garfield is on his happy side. Quick side note, I know I saw a news article where the writer of the series, Andrzej Sapkowski, was saying that he is currently working on a new Witcher book that he will have finished by next year, I believe, and that's very exciting because we love new Witcher content. I have no idea what it's going to be about, because after this book, and I've read Season of Storms, which was a prequel, but after this book, you can't carry on Geralt's story without making a very divisive decision on the events at the end of this book, because, to fill you in if you don't know, which you should know because I don't want you to be spoiled if you don't, Geralt dies at the end of this book. At least that's my take on it. It was very ambiguous. Some people think he's alive, some people think he's dead. I think he's dead. But the point is that if Sapkowski were to continue with this Geralt storyline from the point that the Lady of the Lake left off, then Sapkowski would have to make a call on that ambiguous ending, and some people would be upset, some people would be happy. But that's the thing about what's coming up. It probably will take a while to be published in English because he's Polish, but I'm excited and I'm happy that there's more content now I finish this and I can just wolf more up in the not too distant future. But let's get into the things that I liked about this book, and to put it quite simply, I liked pretty much everything in this book. I cannot make a call currently, since I finished this book less than an hour ago, on whether this is my favourite Witcher book or not. But it's up there. This was just a wonderful book, and I'm going to tell you all why now. So, we'll try and go through this chronologically in the order of events in this book. Now, there are quite a few things that I enjoyed from the perspective of being a game enjoyer, and that was mainly Geralt and the Hansa going to Tucson, which is a location in the DLC of the games. The DLC is called Blood and Wine, and it's this duchy in Nilfgaard that is basically fairy tale land. It's this whole thing. It's a fairy tale land, and the characters go there and winter there while they wait to continue their search for Ciri. And I was just happy to be in the setting because I remember loving it in the games. It was my favourite place in the games. Then being there in the books, I was like, yay, it's Tucson. But there is a criticism here that I can make, and that was what's going on with Geralt, which is when he well, it's not a criticism, it's a debate, because I am uncertain on this. It's when Geralt is in Tucson and doesn't necessarily have an affair because he's not with Yennefer right now. But he sleeps with Fringilla for the entire winter, and that's why he doesn't leave sooner. And man, it's like, I don't particularly like Geralt for it, because of course we know that Yennefer is currently in Steiger Castle being tortured by Vilgefortz, and Geralt thinks at the time that she has betrayed him, and he has some fairly solid evidence to support that. And so, mixed feelings, but you can tell that Geralt is doing this because he's feeling very upset about Yennefer, and I guess he's pining, and then this sorceress comes along, and a lot of people say that he only goes with Fringilla because she looks like Yennefer, but it's never mentioned that she looks like Yennefer, apart from the fact that she has black hair, and her black hair is short, so Her and Yennefer have no similarities in appearance whatsoever, and he claims that is why Geralt slept with her, I believe, are false. But he sees this person who is interested in a relationship with him. He's feeling heartbroken, and as Geralt usually does, he's moping around. So he sleeps with Fringilla. And then eventually he finds out that Yennefer didn't betray him, where Vilgefortz is hiding out, and he leaves her to go there. But some people read this section of Geralt sleeping with Fringilla that he was playing the long game, that he was pretending to like her so that he could get information out of her about Ciri, and then leave. And I just feel like that would have been told to us if that was what was going on. I do think, as much as people don't want to think Geralt would genuinely have an affair and fall in love with this other woman while Yennefer is being tortured, that is what happened. And of course he does leave as soon as he finds out that that's happening to Yennefer. So, you know, we can forgive him there, I suppose. But that's quite a divisive bit. That's what happened in Toussaint. They leave, and then we'll talk a bit about Ciri now. Ciri, stuff happened with Ciri that I've been waiting for quite a while, and that was basically the Wild Hunt is finally expanded upon, because the Wild Hunt is the main villain of the Witcher 3, which is the game I've played. And they've been popping up in different sections in the books so far, and now finally she has a proper encounter with them, where, picking up from the previous book, she goes to the land of the Ainel, which is not their actual native land, which is later revealed, but she goes to where the Ainel are living, and the reason we discover that the Ainel, the Wild Hunt, have been hunting her all this time, was so that they could have a baby with her, and then they would have the power over time and space, and they could continue going through worlds, which is what they've been doing before the conjunction. They were running through worlds, pillaging and conquering and expanding their sphere of influence, and now they're trapped in this one place and they want out. And so this was a really interesting section. I was really happy to see all these characters from the games pop up. There was Eredin, who in the games is kind of this guy with a scary helmet and who talks like this, and then he takes it off and he doesn't talk like that anymore. That's what I associate with Eredin. In the books, he's this charming but very kind of menacing, and you the whole time he's on page, you don't really know where his allegiances lie, what his intentions are, but he was a lot more interesting as a villain or as an antagonistic force than the rah, 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 rah from The Witcher 3. So it was cool to see him turn up, a bit more expanded on with him. I liked seeing the land of the Ainel. That was a cool thing. I didn't mind the dimension hopping, just as a whole, while we're here. Ciri's dimension travelling throughout this book, I actually really liked. I find it really interesting seeing her do it. And it only happened for one chapter, so even if you don't like that sort of thing, it's over after that one chapter. If I were to criticise anything about the dimensional hopping thing in this book, it would be Ciri being with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. It's not that that is a bad thing, I just thought it was a personal choice here. I don't particularly like the idea of Ciri coming to our world or going to worlds that already exist as fantasy worlds in our world. I don't know, it just doesn't click with me. Like, all the other worlds, the other fantasy worlds that don't exist in our world aren't fantasy worlds from books in our world. That's all cool. The whole King Arthur thing, not so much, but I accept it as a storytelling thing. But that's my one gripe with the entire thing there. All that stuff with Ciri was great. It was a bit odd, because Ciri is 15, and the elf king with whom she was trying to get impregnated was like 600. And it's just weird overall, because everyone wants to impregnate Ciri. Like, that bit was messed up, but that had an impact on Ciri, and it was uncomfortable to read, and it was like, But, so that was a bit of an odd spot in this section of the book that I largely liked, but apart from that, it was all really cool. Ciri gets out of the land of the Ainel, does a bit of world travelling, and we move on with the plot. Then we get back, and when she gets back to, then once she leaves the land of the Ainel, there's this chapter with Jar, who is the scribe in the Temple of Melitele in Ebbing, I think is where it is. I think it's in Ebbing. And that chapter was a bit like, I don't care about Jar, you know, it was a long chapter as well. It was a relatively long chapter. I was like, I mean, it was good world building though, but it was a chapter I wanted it to get going. Yeah, we had this whole chapter with Jar joining the army. You get a view on how the world is responding to the oncoming war, the war that is going on, and the oncoming battle, which was one of my favourite bits of this book, was the Battle of Brenna, which was the combination of all of the politics and the war stuff that's been going on in the previous books, where the Lodge of Sorceresses have orchestrated the war so that all of the armies converge in this one point near the burnt down village of Brenna, where they have a massive battle, and this spanned for a chapter as well. None of our main characters, were in this battle. It was just all secondary characters from previously in the book, like Shani and Ayla, and you had but I don't think Barclay Els had turned up before, but you had Sultan Chive and Yarpin Zegrin turning up. So you had all these minor side characters, and Cohen was there as well in this massive battle, and the perspectives were jumping around everywhere. You're in the middle of the fray, then you're in the medical tent, then you're with a messenger, and the whole thing goes on, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed this chapter. It felt hectic, and it was just hard. I couldn't put it down. It was nail-biting stuff, and the part I really enjoyed was actually the part without the fighting. It was a bit in the medical tent with Ayla, Marty Sodegren, Rusty, who was a halfling healer, and Shani as they deal with all the wounded soldiers. That was great. I really, really liked that, and that felt, surprisingly, as there was a battle going on, that was the most tense bit, and it was incredible how Sapkowski set up tension in this bit, just little bits of tension. Like in the first bit in there, Rusty thinks to himself, oh, Shani is new, she's a novice, she's going to fail at some point, and so throughout all the bits in the medical tent in this chapter, you have the tension of Rusty scrutinising Shani, waiting to see her crack, and she doesn't, and just things like that. And the way that he made you care about all of these viewpoint characters that just pop up. There was a messenger that died, and I was like, oh no, the messenger died. He was in the book for like 3 pages, and I was devastated. The way he did it was amazing, and I loved this section. I think some of my favourite sections of the books were in this, like with the Time of Contempt. The rest of the book was okay, but the Kuon Faned is stand out for that. And it's similar in this. That was incredible, and I really liked it. And following up from that nail-biting chapter, we then get to what I believe is chapter 9, and this was the chapter that broke me. This chapter was devastating. This is when Ciri and Geralt and the Hansa all converge on Stiga Castle, where they have been heading to confront Vilgefortz, and Ciri is a bit of a dum-dum. She goes in and she's like, I will let you do whatever you want with me if you let Yennefer go. And Vilgefortz was like, how about I do whatever I want with you and don't let Yennefer go, because I'm really powerful and evil, so screw you. And I was like, yeah, Ciri should have seen that coming. She thought she could just teleport out there with her dimension jumping, but Vilgefortz had like a thing on the castle to stop her from doing that, which she should have guessed because he's really powerful, but oh well. So it looks really bad for Ciri. She's in the chair where she's about to be impregnated. I believe Vilgefortz wants to impregnate her and then take her placenta, and then he's going to do something with that has the elder blood in to get powers to have world domination. We'll talk more about that in the negative section, but just as it all looks hopeless, Geralt and the Hansa arrive and wreak havoc in the castle, and a big battle breaks out. And this chapter was a lot. All of the Hansa, bar Geralt, die. Every single one of them. Milva, Angoulême, Cahir, Regis, all of them died in the course of about 20 pages. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was spoiled on some of this. I didn't know Angoulême was going to die, the rest of them I was aware, and that's my own fault I didn't look for it, but I remember searching something up about Milva in the previous books, because I was like, that didn't make sense, and then instead of giving me the information I wanted, the internet instead went, Milva dies! And similar circumstances for the rest of the characters, but it says a lot about the writing that even though I knew this was going to happen, I was devastated. And throughout this entire chapter, I've never done this before, I was verbally shouting and screaming and sobbing throughout this entire chapter, to the point where my mum was genuinely concerned that I'd hurt myself, because I was being loud, I was so upset. Like, Milva went down, and I was devastated because I love Milva. Then I think it was Cahir went down, and damn it, it's like, Cahir just met Ciri, he just got his goal, and the way he died was very fitting for him. Same with Milva. I think the only character that kind of got the rough end of the stick here was Angoulême, but Milva died from being shot. There was one archer left, she was wiping out some of these people in the gallery, and she shot at the guy instead of hiding, and she killed him instantly, but he managed to shoot her just a bit faster. And that was a good send-off because she died. It's like he who kills with the sword dies by the sword. You know that saying? It was kind of like that, but with her archery. And she still killed him. She saved the day. It was great, but she died, and it was very sad. Cahir died defending Ciri from Bonhart. I hate that man. I hate Bonhart. I'll talk about that in a minute. Cahir died there, and that was a fitting point for him because his whole point was he wanted to rescue Ciri. That was his motivation to be in the story. Angoulême just kind of got hit with an axe and bled out. She didn't do anything in particular, but Angoulême has always been a bit of a tack-on in the story, really. She's nice to be there, but yeah, she was kind of wasn't dealt a great hand of dying. I was actually really impacted by her dying, though, because she's like a kid. And I was like, she was the only one I wasn't sure if she died or not. And I was like, oh, Angoulême, I at least haven't heard, won't die. And then she died. And I was like, bloody hell, Angoulême's gone. Great. And then Regis died, and I love Regis, if you didn't know from all of my previous reviews of books with him in. And God, him dying really hurts me. It really does. It really, really hurts me. I'm really upset about it. And there's a debate about whether he is dead or not, because he didn't turn up in this afterlife section at the end. But for all we know, he is dead. And man, that sucks. And I think Regis, Geralt only sees Regis die, but you can tell that Regis is the one that he's most upset about, and based, I guess. I love Regis, and he got a good send-off. Regis has been this high vampire who Geralt has openly said he would not take a contract on to kill. He would not try and kill Regis. And Regis has never really been shown to... That's never been backed up by anything Regis has done. He's done a few vampire things, but he's never gone full monster mode and proven why Geralt wouldn't take a contract on him. He did before he died. He turned into like a massive bat and just massacred loads and loads of people and overcame his own little personal arc where previously he didn't go with Geralt because he was afraid. He openly said, I'm a coward and I'm not going to go with you. Here, he sacrifices himself for Geralt, and that's a good send-off for his character. That was well deserved for him, and it was really cool seeing him go vampire mode in his final moments. But he's dead, and then Geralt kills Vilgefortz, which was great. Good riddance. That battle. I hope Netflix does this justice, because it's a bit like the Faned coup, where it's meant to be fireballs everywhere, and it just ended with the sorceresses going woo and shooting kind of like little balls of energy. I hope in the show, when this fight happens, I want lightning and fire pillars, like incomprehensible levels of destruction. That's what I want. And Ciri kills Bonhart. Bonhart was just pure evil in this book, and let me tell you, he was the boogeyman. Whenever he turned up on the page in this chapter, I was like, damn, this is not looking good. I felt very tangible fear, like how I did in The Shining when Jack Torrance was axe murdering, I felt just as afraid, because I knew this, in fact more afraid, I'd wager, because Bonhart has this presence in the books of just being invincible. You cannot kill him. He's just going to relentlessly chase Ciri down, and he will not stop until he kills her. And God, when she killed him, I was so happy to see him dead. He was a horrible, horrible man. Such a great villain, and I'm glad he died the way he did. It was really good. And he managed to kill witches, apparently, which was mad. Like, that just showed in this book. They're like, in case you're not scared enough of this man already, he's killed witches. And I was like, he's killed witches. Great. Of course he has. I love him and I hate him so much, so that was awesome. And then we have the whole deal with Emhyr when he reveals himself to be Ciri's dad, and it's like, nonce, because he was going to impregnate Ciri to have to have a child who would then have another child who would save the world. And he actually went through quite a lot of development here. He realised kind of now he had Ciri in front of him after having taken her away from Geralt and Yennefer and seeing how much that hurt her and seeing her as a human being, I think, rather than just the thing that he needs to get to save the world. I think he realised how disgusting what he was planning to do was, and he let her go. So good on you, Emhyr. You might be this horrible war tyrant and, for the most part, paedophile who wants to have sex with your own daughter, but you got over that at least. I also really liked all the moments with Emhyr and the fake Ciri, where they always felt very sad and very tragic, and Emhyr went for his own little character development there. Like, he goes for a fair amount of development in this. Like, basically his development is like, I'm going to stop trying to have sexual relationships with children, which is, like, in its own way, a pretty twisted bit of character development. He ends up on the side of right, but the fact that he has to develop through that is on its own just like, But yeah, he was going, it's like, the whole book he's got this dilemma of what he's going to do with the fake Siri, because she is the wrong Siri. It's like, is he going to kill her and replace her with the real Siri, or is he going to let her live and marry her? And in the end, he lets her live, and he does marry her. Amir is a very complex character, and whenever he was on the page with her, especially, I liked seeing the more human side to him, because he physically felt it. And I think that's part of why he let Siri go, because this fake Siri has been getting to him. He's been feeling more and more human, and his paternal side is coming out more and more. So, good job, Amir, I guess. But yeah, that happened. And then stuff happens. That's my summary of the end part after this all happens. Stuff happens, and we get to the end. But before I talk about the end, I do want to talk about this chapter with Boreas Munn, Isengrim, Fealtiana, and Dijkstra as they meet on their way fleeing the continent to Zerrikania, which is like the desert where no one goes. And you get accounts of why they've had to leave the continent, and that was awesome. It was a good send-off for all those characters who I didn't particularly care about. Boreas Munn, Isengrim, Fealtiana, for the part that he was in, the one small section, I was like, oh, he's cool. So I was glad for him to get a send-off, but Dijkstra in particular, I was happy to get this closure for this side character who I do really like. And it was great, the politics were really interesting, and that was a nice close for those characters. Some other things I really liked was the setting up of Ciri bringing a plague to the continent, and then that's what killed Little Eye in the Sword of Destiny, I believe. So that was a cool full circle thing, and it shows consequences to the world travelling. That was cool. Like that. Dandelion as well in this book. I was really upset because him and Geralt kind of fell out. Dandelion fell in love with the Duchess in Tucson and stayed there, and I was angry at Dandelion, but that's because Sapkowski wanted you to be, because you're following Geralt's point of view, I suppose. And I was like, damn it, Dandelion, you've come this far and now you're leaving the journey, what the deuce? But it makes sense because Dandelion would have died in Steiger Castle, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be there. And he returned in the last section of the book, where Geralt and Ciri go to Tucson to go and greet him, and I'm like, oh, he's going to be at the palace gates and it's going to be awesome, and then no, he's being executed for sleeping around again, and it's like, bloody man, you know? That was a good way to bring his character back in, and it was a really funny scene where the executioner is like, I need you to forgive me before I kill you. And Dandelion's like, no, I'm not going to forgive you, you're going to kill me. And then the executioner's like, right, not killing him then. And then it's really funny. But that was that. There was a weird bit where Geralt wasn't going to save Dandelion, but that was his development at the end of this book, which was really well done and also really kind of sad and also a bit weird, but we'll go into it. After, I suppose, seeing his friends die, after going to try and save the world, do this big thing and getting involved, which he always never used to do, but he's got involved again, and it resulted in him, by the end of it all, having to bury all of his friends. And he's also finally got Yennefer and Ciri back, and I think it just reminds him of his own and their own mortality. And so in these later stages of the book, he doesn't want to get involved in these things anymore, because he doesn't want to die and he doesn't want to risk them getting hurt, because he wants to grow old with them. He's decided what he wants now and he's got what he wants, and he doesn't want to risk losing it, to the degree that he would be willing to watch Dandelion die rather than go and rescue him, which I think is a bit drastic, but we'll gloss over that. And the fact that Geralt dies going against that decision to save the dwarves is such a fitting end for him. It's because throughout the whole series he said, I'm not going to get involved, and then he does. And him in this situation, the fact that he was ready to save these dwarves more than Dandelion, even though I'm angry about it, does make sense, because there are more dwarves and there's just one Dandelion, and Dandelion was less innocent than the dwarves being massacred, I believe. Well, I suppose. So, yeah. But seeing Geralt make that decision and then actually choose to be heroic one last time and have that come back and bite him in the form of a pitchfork to the chest and kill him was a well-rounded ending for him, and kind of the subversive way. Sapkowski frequently goes against these things, you know, these fairy tale stereotypes, and Geralt is the knight in shining armour, but he is a masterful subversion of that in the fact that he is also not a hero, but he is also the most moral character in the series, and then having this morality come back to bite him, even though I can't quite put my finger on it, felt right for the story, and that's where it wrapped up. Also love the pre-chapter things in each chapter, where it's like a section from an encyclopedia or something that gives you an extra insight into the world. I really enjoy those, and I am actually going to use it when I start writing my own novel. I'm going to put those in the chapters because they're really clever and they work to get some world building across in a short, digestible way that is usually applicable to the chapter coming out. It's just really cool, and I really like that. Lodge of Sorceresses as well. I love them. I love the whole idea of them. They, it doesn't happen on page, but it's implied that they are blamed for the plague that happens, and thus all of them are killed, or at least Philippa is. And man, it was great. Philippa went through her own little development in this book, and it was all just really fun. I really liked the Lodge of Sorceresses, and they were one of my favourite parts of the series. I will talk about the ending quickly. I liked everything about the ending up until the actual end bit, where actually we'll turn Andrew Garfield onto his negative side, because this is where we're going to become a bit more critical about some things. The ending is not bad, it's just very ambiguous, and I don't like that particularly. In fact, I don't even hate the ending, it's just felt like a bit of an anticlimax, but we'll talk about it. I, as I said, read this as Geralt and Yennefer died, and then I'm not sure what happened after that. Ciri did something with the unicorn whose name I won't try to say, and she went on a boat and left the continent for good, and that was kind of where we left it with her. And as far as Geralt and Yennefer go, I read them as being in the afterlife. We're not really sure. I think it's unreliable narrator here. I feel like it's highly probable that from the point where Geralt and Yennefer die, everything else that happens is Ciri being an unreliable narrator, although I'm hesitant for that because it's still on the omniscient side. Something happens with the unicorn. I'm not sure what happens with the unicorn. And then Geralt and Yennefer wake up somewhere and they don't know where they are, but they're together. And that's really sweet, you know, they get to be together after all this time in seeming bliss. And then Yennefer is talking to, Ciri is talking to Galahad, and he says, "Is that how the story ends?" And she goes, "No, of course not. What do you mean?" They get married, they do, and I was there, and Missel was there, and Cahir was there, and Yarpen Seagrim was there, and then he goes, "Oh, okay," and she starts crying, and then he's like, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "It's the wind in my eyes." And this is the bit that I definitely know is unreliable narrator. The previous bit I'm not so sure because it's not specifically Ciri saying anything, it's the omniscient narrator, but here, Ciri saying that and then crying, I believe, is showing that she's lying. She's given the story this fairy tale ending that Yennefer and Geralt get married in the afterlife. And this is backed up by a little pre-chapter thing in the section where, before this chapter, from Florence Delanoy, and previously in the books, Florence Delanoy has been giving accounts, or snippets of their book, the accounts of events from the series have been given, like Ciri getting Kelpie. It was said something like she made a deal with a witch and gave her blood in exchange for a mare as fast as the wind, or something like that. And in the books, obviously, Ciri got Kelpie because she was going to sleep with a guy, but then he got shot and he dies on her, and she takes his horse, basically, which is not the sort of fairy tale thing that you would want. So then the way I read it is that Florence Delanoy recounting the way Ciri got the mare in a fairy tale kind of way to gloss over the very real and not happy way that the things happen in this world. Florence Delanoy then agreeing with Ciri's account of Geralt and Yennefer getting married, confirms in a way that it's not true, because Florence Delanoy has been shown previously to not tell the events correctly for the sake of fairy tale happiness, cheerfulness, right? So I think they're dead. Whether they're in the afterlife, what the spell with the unicorn did is up for debate. I believe they could be in the afterlife, but then what did the unicorn do? What was the point of that? That was the only thing I didn't like. If the bit with the unicorn hadn't happened, and it had kind of ended with them dying and then cut to Ciri with Galahad, I would have bought into this whole idea and it would leave unanswered. The unanswered questions wouldn't be there. But that's the point of the ending, right? It's ambiguous. You're meant to have these questions. It's not meant to be clear cut. But that's my take on it. While we're on the negative side, I'll mention one thing. The weakest point in the series possibly was when Geralt found out where Steiger Castle is. And it's because he's underground on a little monster hunt, and then he stumbles across a chamber where Stefan Skellen and the nobles who are unhappy with Emir because he's not married their daughters are all talking, and Geralt is just there in time to hear them give away Vilgefortz's location. He's just there in time. And that didn't feel earned. It was a bit like, oh, you know, plot needs to happen, he finds out this way. So that was a bit like, didn't really like that. But that, you know, that's like the smallest plot hole. And another thing that I thought was going to be resolved and wasn't, was Ciri's relation to Falca. Because in the previous book, there was a whole thing. Sorry, I'm getting a sore throat from talking so much. It might have even been Baptism of Fire. There was a whole thing about Ciri's lineage, where they said that Ciri was not related to Falca. But in the Time of Content, there was this whole thing with visions with Falca, and Codringer and Fenn had said that Falca was one of Ciri's relatives. And my problem was, I can buy that the sorceresses didn't get it right and that Ciri was related to Falca. But the problem is that if Ciri is related to Falca, then Ciri doesn't have the Elder Blood. Right? So then it's just like, I feel like I've missed something. If you know, or you think you have a theory that makes sense, please leave it down below, because this is like the one thing I don't get about the series, apart from the ambiguous ending, which is purposeful. It's like, what's up with that? What's Ciri's bloodline about? I don't quite understand how Ciri can be related to Falca and still have the Elder Blood, and if she's not related to Falca, then what was the point of involving that at all? And why did Ciri have visions of her? Quick negative, Vilgefortz. I said I'd talk about Vilgefortz in the negative section. He was very moustache twirling by the end, and that felt... It didn't sit right with me, and that just might have been how I interpreted the character, because I always saw Vilgefortz as kind of this very intelligent and menacing and powerful sorcerer. And by the end he's just kind of moustache twirling evil, where he's like, I'm gonna take over the world, and I'm gonna rule everyone, and it's gonna be great, I'm gonna be a god, and it's gonna be awesome, and then he starts dribbling while he's talking about it. And I guess that works because his background is that he was not a sorcerer, he was this mercenary, he was a terrible man who became a sorcerer to get more power. It fits, but I like Bonhart, and he's just moustache twirling evil. But he was in the more human and terrifying sense of being pure evil, whereas Vilgefortz is very much more cartoonish because he's the magician, and he's like, I'm going to rule the world. But that was just a small thing that didn't sit well with me. So yeah, that's all the negatives I can think of. Apart from that, this was great. I really, really liked this book. I thought it was awesome. And that's all I have to say about the book now, I think. That's all I have to say about the series now. I'll do a tier ranking of the books at some point, maybe a tier ranking of the characters in future videos, but that's The Witcher over. I gave this a 4 stars on Goodreads. I stand by that, just because I would be lying if I said that all of this was perfect. But 4 stars for this, and the series as a whole 5 stars. I don't care that the ending was a bit odd. 5-star series, I loved it. I would do a series review, but I don't think I need to, since I've got all my thoughts open already. I loved this. I love this series. It's my favourite series I've ever read. And I'm going to miss it. But I'm glad that I was along for the journey. So that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. Leave all opinions down below, because this is more divisive than any of the books previously, so I want to get a discussion going. And I will see you all next time. I'm going to start reading Weird Sisters, and that should be done pretty soon, considering that it's a lot shorter than that book. So, yeah. I'll see you then, and until then, have a good one. Bye.